promise these guys are going to be short here. You like that?
Yeah, love it.
Okay. We have 3 supervisors tonight. Okay. That's very nice, because one of the things that I want to say is I want to thank them. Because, yeah, we may not always agree with them. But one thing we do know is that they are committed to James City County. And they spend lots of time on issues for James City County. And is it a thankless job at times?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we're really lucky to have them, and thank you very much for doing what you do. We really appreciate it. On the far end of the table is Ruth Larson. She's the chair of the supervisors. I'm going to have some fun with this. Is that she represents an extraordinarily large constituency here in Ford's Colony. I think it's like 84 lots, is that right? Next to her is Jim Eisenhower. Okay, he is a resident of and then last but not least, Michael Hippel. Ford's Colony. I always say this not because I'm picking on Jim, but you know, is that he was a flight guy, okay? And I always get a kick out of a couple of the airplanes that he flew. And I thank him for his service also in Vietnam. Thanks very much for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them. Okay, I believe each one of them is going to say something, and then we're going to open it up to questions. Okay, it's your opportunity. I hope you all take advantage of it. Thanks.
We're live, okay. All right. I'll go ahead and start. Welcome, Ruth. This has usually been the Mike and Jim show, that you guys know, and we try to do it a fairly informal process, and we're going to try to do that again tonight. But one of the things I wanted to start out with is to ask folks in the audience a few questions. See if I can get a show of hands. How many of you have moved here in the last 4 or 5 years? Okay, a lot of people. How many of you who've moved here in the last 4 or 5 years came from outside Virginia? Okay, still a significant number. I like to start off with just a brief recap for folks. Local government in Virginia is a little bit different. They call it 400 years of tradition unhampered by progress. We are what's called a Dillon Rule state. And most of the states, I think 42 or so, 43 states are what they call home rule, and then the Dillon Rule. And the difference is, in a home rule state, which is in most of them, the local government basically has an agreement with the state government that says, you guys can do whatever is necessary to run your local government unless we specifically prohibit it. In Virginia, it's just the reverse. I call it the Mother May I rule. If we are not allowed to do anything at local government level unless the General Assembly specifically authorizes us to do it. So that's a totally different kettle of fish. One of the things that people need to understand also is that local government has some different aspects here than they do anywhere else. First of all, roads. We don't own any roads. All the roads in James City County are owned by VDOT. So when you want to call me about the pothole in front of your house, or in Ford's Colony, you call Drew, but anywhere else in the county that you have a public road that you have a problem with, you have to call VDOT. And so we act often as intermediaries. I get many calls from constituents about there's a sinkhole out here by my house, or they haven't paved the road, or we've got all these kinds of problems. And we act as intermediaries with VDOT. We have a very good relationship with our local engineer, but realize that we're limited to how we can influence it. We don't have any legal authority to fix a lot of these things. So I think a lot of people don't understand that. Another thing is health department. We do not have a county health department. The health department is a state level function. And as we found out in COVID, it didn't work very well. And so that's one of the things we keep trying to fix. So there are a bunch of things like that. I could go on, but I just wanted to give you just sort of a little bit of a flavor of the fact that some things are a little different in local government here than they are other places that you've seen. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Ruth. Ruth is our chair this year. And we'll just basically, each of us, I'm going to let Ruth go first, and Michael go last second, and I'll go last. And we'll just each of us talk about a few things that have been going on in the county that we think you may be interested in hearing about from us. And then when it's all over, we will take questions. And you can aim questions at each of us individually or as a group or whatever. So I think with that, Ruth, you want to start out?
Sure. Thank you. Since this is my first time here, I'll just take a quick second and introduce myself. My name is Ruth Larson. My husband Craig and I live in First Colony. I often have to say first because everyone's bored, so first. We have 3 grown children. Our son Rob lives out in the Norwich area, and our 2 daughters, one lives in Richmond, one lives up in the Northern Virginia area. Why she loves it, I don't know, but she does. This is my home. I was born here, and my husband and I are in the hotel business, so we've lived all across the country, but been back here since 1993. I served 10 years on the Williamsburg-James City County School Board before running for the Board of Supervisors in 2015, so I've been on the board since 2016. And I'm all about community. I love this area. I think it's one of the prettiest places ever, and love to do anything I can do to support it. I am the chair of the Tourism Council, which was formed when the extra 1% tax got put through, and that 0.5% goes to marketing efforts. That was something that was done by the state, not anything to do with local government, but I do have to say that we are seeing a tremendous difference that those marketing dollars are making as far as tourism goes. We've just hired a new CEO, Ed Harris, who's going to come from Discover Lancaster. And in fact, he and his family are going to be staying in timeshares here for a week while they look for a home. So I hope if you run into he and his wife, Kristen, I'm sure that you'll be very welcoming. We're really excited to have Ed here leading Visit Williamsburg. I also serve on the School Liaison Committee with Supervisor McGlennon. And if you're unaware of what that is Supervisor McGlennon and myself, and then 2 representatives from the City Council, and 2 representatives from the school board, and the county administrator, city manager, and superintendent. We try to meet quarterly to discuss issues of importance to the schools and to the localities. We meet again in June, as a matter of fact. I serve on the Virginia Association of Counties board. I am the president-elect for VACO, and we'll see if somebody wants to step in November. Otherwise, that's when I'll take office. And this morning we hosted the Region 2 VACO meeting here at our law enforcement center. And people were so impressed with our law enforcement center and how we thought ahead in that and planning. And we heard from Cheryl Wilson, who is the executive director of the Virginia 250. I hope you all will really get involved in that. This is really exciting, our nation's 250th birthday. And it's going to finish, the big finale is going to be at Colonial Williamsburg in 2026 on July 4th. And so we have a real opportunity as an area to really be involved in this. And already Colonial Williamsburg and Jamestown Yorktown Foundation are leading the way with programs that they've done. They're doing a program called Common Cause. Last year they had 300 attendees. This year 450 attendees from 37 states. So I'm really excited about Virginia 250 and about celebrating. I like events. where we all come together, no matter our political affiliation, and things we can all agree on. And I think one thing we can agree on is America's a great country and we need to celebrate it. So.
Well, welcome back. I'm Michael Hipple, and I'm running the, or not running, I will next year, in the Powhatan District. I got on the board in 2013, and I'm married to my wife Kristen, and we have 7 children. And when we moved here, my dad bought land here in '61, and he bought it for $90 an acre. Isn't that amazing? And the fellow that sold it to him, he had the land, he bought it for $50 an acre, he timbered it for $40 an acre, and sold it to Dad for $90 an acre. And he told me, I'm volunteer up at the volunteer fire department, and we were up there one day, and he told me, he said, when your daddy bought that land for $2,000, that 20 acres, he said, it was all the money I needed to get out from going bankrupt. I was just about going bankrupt. And I said, isn't that amazing? That $2,000 is a cell phone bill. I mean, it has gotten crazy. And just watching it through the years, how the community's changed. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, you get a lot of people in the community and it changes it and all that. I think it's made our community for the better. And just in this room and in Fords County alone, there's so many different people in this community with backgrounds. Once you start talking to everybody in this community and talk about their backgrounds and see what they've done and where they've been, we need a lot of y'all on our boards. There's room on our boards. We're always looking for more people. It's a great thing that you want to be on a board for 4, 5, 6, 10, 12 years or whatever. Lifetime if you want. But it's really, you know, we've got a lot of boards out there, and there's a lot of knowledge here. And, you know, when I was president up at the volunteer fire department, I've been up there since '84, we had one guy, and I use him as an example, and I grew up with him, so he wouldn't mind. But he always was, the group would be moving in this direction, and it was always like a negative thing that came out of the blue. He'd be like, well, how about such and such, and they're like, really? And there for a while they were like, you know, we need to get him off board. And I said, no, we need to leave him on the board, because the thing about it, he makes us look at different things. We may not go with exactly everything he comes up with, but it does change how we look. And that's the way I look at the community. With each and every one of us, we can make our community what it is. We've done a lot as far as trying to figure out, okay, you can't, by the state, say, okay, 100,000 people and that's all we're gonna have in James City County. Not allowed, can't do that. You know, so we've been looking at different ways to keep the unique things that drew all of you here, but also have all the things that you want while you're here. And that's a tight line and a hard balance. And they told me I'll only have an hour to talk before they get back home. And they know I'll talk a lot. So I'm going to stop right there. And I'm going to turn it over to y'all and give y'all a chance to ask us any questions or what we do, how we do things. If we can't get you an answer tonight, we will get you an answer. So whatever questions you have, please feel free to, you know, give them to us. Let us see what we can do with them. Let's see if we can help you out if there's anything. And of course, if there's no questions, that's okay too. I'll turn it over to y'all. Thanks, folks.
Okay, I moved back up here from the Lower Peninsula in 1994. So I built my house over off Shinnecock in fall of '94, moved in April Fool's Day 1995. So that's 29 years ago. And it just doesn't seem like it was last week. In those days, 199 ended at Route 5. Didn't go all the way up through here. There was no Firestone gate. The Edinburgh Loop was gravel on the backside. And when you went from the corner of Edinburgh and Edinburgh down toward my house, about a mile, you saw one other house. And we referred to ourselves over there as the Lost Colony. No golf courses, no nothing. So we've witnessed a tremendous amount of change. I retired from the airline business in 2005 and ran for the Board of Supervisors and first got on the board in 2006. Served 8 years, was off for 4, and I'm back for 2 more terms. I'm halfway through my 4th term. I basically ran because in the 80s and early 90s, we had what I call basically runaway growth in this county. And we're still sort of paying the price for that. And let me tell you, one of the things I want to emphasize for you is that we've done a lot as a board to try to temper the growth rate and to make sure that what does occur maintains the character of our community. And I've got to congratulate my colleagues on I think, doing a really good job. But we're going to be back under renewed pressure for residential development. The big thing right now is the state is throwing a big block of land in the eastern state on the market. And the initial proposal for those is probably, I think, one piece is about 500 or 600 houses and one's about 1,100 houses. So you're looking at essentially the equivalent of almost another Fort Scott in that area right now. One of the things that I would be looking at, and we're all going to be looking at, is what that impact has on our community, what it has on stormwater. It's right in the middle of the most highly impacted watershed we have. What impact it has on you, the taxpayer, because most of residential development typically costs more than it costs more in services than it generates in tax revenues. So I would be looking very carefully at anything the developer brings forward to see what the fiscal impact is, because I don't think it's fair to say, yeah, we're going to develop all these 2,000 homes or whatever, and by the way, the rest of you that've been here for a long time, you're going to share the bill. Okay? I think that development should basically pay its way. That's the attitude that I take toward the thing. I bring that up because that's going to be, I think, one of the big threats that we're going to be facing in the next year or two. It's not just that, there are several other places. There are several other things I'm sure you guys want to talk about. I'm just not going to allude to them a little bit. I'm sure you want to talk about the budget. I don't know whether you're aware, but we did pass the budget with an 83-cent tax rate, but we did a 5-cent tax rebate. And the way that's going to work is you're going to get your tax bill, and it's going to say, here's your assessed value times the 83 cents, and here's what your taxes are. The next line is going to say, and here's the 5-cent rebate, what comes off of it. So essentially that takes about 1/3 of what the equivalent increase would have been back off for next year. Now that's a one-time deal. But the way we did it is we're doing it out of what we call fund balance. We built up some surpluses during the time period of our the COVID. And we're using that fund balance to help soften the impact of that increase. We can argue back and forth about what we're using the money for. I can tell you one of the biggest problems we have right now is we are behind a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions in the salaries and everything we pay for people. It manifested itself in our police and our fire by tremendous shortages. We have 104 police officers. At one point, we had like 30 vacancies here. We were really, really undermanned. The board decided to put money into police salaries and fire salaries. And that was about a year or two ago. And we have essentially recouped, we've recovered. Because now we're competing with the other jurisdictions, and we are drawing quality candidates, and we've gotten back to where we have what I consider to be adequate protection for you from public safety in the way of police and fire. Where we have fallen way behind, 2 other areas. One is all the rest of our county staff. We're having a hard time keeping people because you don't get rich working for local government, but you need to be able to make a living at it. And these folks are going to other jurisdictions for as little as a couple $1,000s a year, and you can't blame them. So we have to be competitive. That's one of the things that we were looking at. That extends itself to schools. We are going to have a huge exodus of teachers. I hear about it all the time. My daughter's a middle school teacher up in Townhall. And those were the factors that we had to put money into. How did we go about doing it? Well, what we had was that money that we had left stored up in the excess fund balance, we were going to put into capital, because because after COVID, a lot of our capital programs have been sort of pushed out, and we were gonna try to catch up a little bit. We basically deferred almost $6.5 million of capital that we pushed out again in order to be able to do this tax rebate without having to strain the budget too much. So that's basically the outline of what we wound up settling on. As you may have, if you watched us, you can see that we each all have a different opinion about what we ought to do and how we ought to do it. And we finally came to consensus on something that we could all agree to. The vote on the budget, by the way, was unanimous, 5-0. Other things, you may want to hear a little bit about the water and sewer bills. We have done a split between us and HRSD as far as the billing. And those of you who have already gotten your HRSD, you got one bill, and then a week later you got a second bill, and it showed the first bill as being overdue. And that's beyond our control. That was HRSD not being able to catch up. They're going to get caught up. Essentially, if you do like I did, set up automatic payment, they'll take it all at the end of the month, but they'll be on a regular monthly basis. Our billing rolled out fairly independently. One of the things that I've noticed right away was that combined bill, you didn't really notice it or see it. 50% of my bill goes to HRSD for treatment. My water services and my sewer services take it to HRSD is only about half of my bill. So JCSA is about half, HRSD is about half. That's very common. We'll be willing to take any questions on that as well. And the other big thing I think that's sort of hanging over us right now, and I'm sure you'll have questions about that, we can each talk about it, is what's going on with the schools. And the difficulty right now we're in is that if we don't know when the city of Windsor is going to make their decision about whether they want to split the school system or whether they want to stay together. Intuitively, from my perspective, we are better to stay together. Because if we split, we're going to need a new middle school. You're looking at another $100 million under construction today. So it's not really in our best interest to do that, but if we have to, that's what we're going to have to do. Our problem is we haven't been able to get an answer from them right yet. And it's a bit of a negotiation back and forth, and I'll let everybody weigh in on their thoughts about it and hear what you have to say about it. But I just want to make sure everybody knew where I was at. With that, you want to go ahead and...
I would just like to ask the supervisors to please repeat the question. It will help with our audio.
Okay, very good. And if you, you're going to run the microphone around, or you're going to have people come up to it?
No, I think they can hear.
Okay.
You'll be able to hear them fine if you just repeat it.
Okay,
We'll
all
be
right.
in good shape.
You want me to do that, or you want to do it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
One thing you have addressed, but I would appreciate if you would, was the money that's going to the sports complex. This is not something that's widely supported, I think, by most people, and it is something that I know not all of you are unified on the board of supervisors about this, but I'd like to know where that stands and why we're citizens listen to a little more about that.
Okay. Let me let, you want to start? All right.
Sure.
All three of us will answer the question, because we'll each have a different take on it, I'm sure.
Could you replace the?
Yeah.
Sure, the question was regarding the sports complex, that, where are we? We weren't all in agreement, a lot of citizens didn't agree with it. Why did we move ahead? I would say that we've talked about it for so I'm sure you probably know, I did support it. And one of the reasons that I did support it is I'm a big tourism advocate. When I got on the tourism board to represent James City County there, we were told that one of the things that we needed was a new product. The way that I try not to get too much into the nitty-gritty, but the way that the historic triangle tax worked was a half a penny went to the localities, a half a penny went to the tourism council, Visit Williamsburg. And so, but also in that language was that we were going to have to, as a locality, continue to give maintenance of effort money to both the chamber and to Visit Williamsburg. Visit Williamsburg Board made a decision immediately to take the money that we were getting from the 3 localities and put that into a product development fund, because we were told we were going to need a new product. Busch Gardens constantly reinvest. They do a new ride, they do something new. Colonial Williamsburg's doing something new all the time, some new programming, same with JYF. But we were told by tourism professionals that this area needed something. And so the reason that the sports complex was what was decided was because we had seen studies that even during an economic downturn, parents were still going to invest in their children's activities, and they would travel. And all I can tell you, frankly, is from personal experience. My middle child was a rower for George Mason University. We went up and down the East Coast, taking her everywhere. Her dad and I went without, we didn't do fancy vacations. We went to rowing regattas. My youngest daughter was a swimmer for Virginia Tech for 4 years. I went all across this country and spent weeks at meets. I shopped, TJ Maxx, grocery stores, went to restaurants, stayed in hotels. All of this since she was about 8 years old. And so I knew that that was probably very true. And so it was just that the sports complex was what we decided to go with on a new product. I would encourage you, it's the Historic Triangle. I can get it for you before we leave. They have a website. That is the authority that is doing that. And they actually came to our Tourism Council meeting yesterday. And the projected annual local economic and fiscal impacts are 245 plus sustainable annual jobs, $10 million in associated annual wages, 1.3 in sales, rental, and transient occupancy taxes, 42,000 annual room nights of hotels and motels, 21 million in net annual economic impact, 560,000 annual visitors. And we really feel that that is going to come to fruition. And there is a name that Andrew Trivett shared with us yesterday of a Grand Park Sports Campus in Westfield, Indiana. They have done a documentary on that. It talks about people who were not in favor. It shows the good, the bad, and the ugly, and what it's meant to that area. You might want to Google it and see if you can watch it. It's Grand Park Sports Campus, Westfield, Indiana. So that is why I supported it. I still stand by that. I know that a couple of members, with Jim being one, did not. And we are paying for that from tourism money. Tourism dollars that come into our area, they have to be paid, they have to go towards tourism investment. And so that's how we are paying for this. It is not coming out of our general fund. So, if everything doesn't go the way that we think it will, we'll have to reset. But we are really hoping that we are going to see a highly successful sports complex. And so.
We can't hear you.
I'll repeat it. So one of the issues is that Colonial Williamsburg owns the land, and that is true. It is a lease. And I guess for me, I have less trepidation about that simply because of where it is, because I do think Bypass Road is set up to handle the additional traffic. We could have put it, War Hill Track could have been a place to put it, but the traffic already on Long Hill, as you know, and frankly, we don't have the hotel You know, one thing that I've been saying to the hoteliers of James City County is you gotta pick it up. Because, you know, I know from traveling with my own daughters, I've gotta stay somewhere that's safe, that's clean, that is, you know, typically has a flag. And so, you know, we didn't have a big hotel inventory over in that area. We have a bigger hotel inventory over near the visitor center. But we truly think that this is going to be, you know, this is going to be a game changer for even Bush, the restaurants. We know James City, gosh knows, does Target need any more people? But I think they'll see a definite impact from this as well.
Where is it gonna be? Behind?
It's going to be behind the visitor center. I am happy to, this is a little bit, but I can pass it around and you all can look, and it has the information in it from the PowerPoint that Andrew did. But let me also encourage you, before Jim gets on here and just trashes everything I said. Thanks a lot, Jim. Let me encourage you to go. I will get the website and I will pass it to Drew and he can send it out for the Historic Triangle Authority. And you can go on their website and see all this information, but I'll pass it around.
Can we do a follow-up to Ruth?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hey, Ruth, you talked about how you really enjoy this area, and I'd love to poll if you would like to have more hotels, more tourists, more traffic, and busier restaurants. Of those four, I don't think any of those have to do with quality of life for the residents here. I get that we have this additional Tommy tax that is driving revenue for you guys to spend. Maybe we should get rid of that Tommy tax. It's a state level issue. I understand it's not yours. We really are looking to spend money. Pickleball is probably not of great interest to us here. So I'd like you to refocus about what makes this place good to live in, not having more people come in and crowd it out.
So I imagine everybody heard that. I'm guessing. So I appreciate that. But I think in order to do things that we need to do, you're very fortunate in that you live in a beautiful community with a great HOA that keeps, you know, you have so many amenities. Not all of our citizens have that. And so it is my hope that by doing things like this sports complex, we are able to invest in, we have a great park system, we'll be able to invest in our park system, we'll be able to invest in our schools. There will be things that we're able to offer for the quality of life for our citizens. And I understand that we're not all going to agree on that. I get it. But I do think it's a good thing, and I'm really excited about it. So.
I think we should give you all a chance to answer.
Let Michael talk about it, and we'll do the follow-up questions from once we get through overall.
And I voted for it, and the reason was it's part of James City County, but it's not in James City County. So the traffic worries, and that's why we'll have people filter through to come into the restaurants and shop, and that's why. But we won't have the traffic jams that they may have in Williamsburg. And Williamsburg's carrying the biggest note on this. We're not carrying that note. So if anything were to happen to it, it's gonna really affect Williamsburg. It's not gonna affect James City County. And we're not doing it out of the general fund. We're doing it out of the tax, the Tommy tax, as everybody refers to it now. And, you know, so that tax is paying for that. So we have to use that for tourism-related items. We can't just go, you know what, we want to put that to our new county complex. We can't do that by law. We have to put it into some type of tourism thing. So that's why we're putting that money into that and not using any money out of general fund. And Jim had a question the other day, and Jim wasn't in favor with it, and we go back and forth whether we want something or don't. And so Jim wasn't in favor of it, and he made a comment of, I'm worried, which is concerned, that it may come out of the general fund sometime. And so I asked the county administrator at that meeting, point blank, is there any chance that this is coming out of the general fund? He said, no, for the life of this, it all will come out of the tourism fund, that we're not going to use the general fund to support this. And he believes that that's going to be true all the way through the end of the project. Now, the lease is, once you renew the lease and all that on the land, you can go up to 90 years. Most buildings are gonna last 50 to 60. They're not gonna last 90 years, especially a sports facility like that. Something's gonna change in 90 years, and I'm probably not gonna be here in 90 years. So and so what I'm looking at is how can we boost our economy that's gonna give us more taxes from our commercial side, so that we don't have to tax as much on our residential side. And this is one item. And you've always gotta look for new items coming up, new things coming up, new ideas coming up, because if we didn't, and we sat here, I can guarantee you 10, 15 years down the road, maybe 20 years down the road, you'll look at us and go, why are you doing that? What did you sit there for? We hired you to do something. You know, and we're gonna do things that are spot on, number one, right to be. Other things we're gonna do, just like everybody else in human nature, we're gonna make a mistake somewhere. I don't think this is a mistake, but if you prove me wrong, I'll be the first one to go, you're right. And, but all we can do is what we think is the best at this time for the 5 members, and as all y'all know, it takes 3 to move something forward. Usually we get a majority, but, so that's where we're at. And Jim, I think Jim wants to add to it, and we'll go back.
We'll come back to all the questions in just a second. Let me, as the dissenting vote, let me explain why I voted the way I did, and then also tell you that, you know, the vote has been taken, the decision has been made, and the facility is going to be built. Now, that being said, it is my earnest hope that it is successful. It's my earnest hope that it's successful. I had several reservations, some of which have been partially addressed, some of which have not. And let me outline those for you. You know, ultimately, this is a good deal for our hotels and motels, because we are going to be putting James City County roughly, for most, up to about $1.6 million a year into the operation of this facility. Part of that is dedicated money that basically we are directed by state law under Senator Norman's. It's called that maintenance of effort money. That what we were given them before we're required to give now, and it's actually going over to the tourism, to the recreation facility. The other part is part of the agreement we signed, and that basically says that most of the money that is being used to build the building and pay the long-term capital debt is being handled by the city of Williamsburg. The projections are that this will not operate necessarily at a profit. Now, there was a fine difference. If you made it just strictly something you gave to somebody to run and didn't have any control over it on the local level, there was a greater chance that it would break even. But we opted to do a little different. We opted to basically have the facility service not only this tourism need, but also to meet some of our needs. We've had on the books a long time a need for another community gymnasium. You know, we could have gone out and built a community gymnasium. It would have cost us a significant amount of money. The reason we didn't do it was because it was one of those things that was always in the nice-to-do category as opposed to must-haves. This was an opportunity to basically fill a lot of that need, because this facility will be available to a lot of our citizens. And I think if you take a look at the rec center, there are a lot of citizens that are going to go use this. Okay? The problem I had with it was we were going to use tax money. It's finally worked out that there is what we call a tourism. If you go into our budget, there's a tourism fund. And the money for that tourism fund comes in from tourism-related things. It's the meals tax, the rooms tax, they're all set by state law. And we have built up a surplus in that fund for quite a while. What's going to happen over the next couple of years, this year I think we put $400,000, in addition to our maintenance of effort money, we put $400,000 into the budget to pay the folks to build up the reserve so that when they're operating this thing, they will have the financial reserves to basically fall back on and make sure it operates well. Starting in year 2 through year 5, each of us, York County and us, we're putting in $800,000. So there's $1.6 million to cover operating reserves, potential operating losses or whatever, for the time being, for that out to year 5. At year 6 and on, it then becomes, the contract says, we will pay a minimum of $300,000 to a maximum of $800,000 a year, depending upon how the venue is performing. So the concerns I had were, one was mentioned, I was concerned about it being on leased land. But what I was really concerned about was the fact that if this is a going concern and it is making money hand over fist, we are still required to pay $300,000 a year from us. If it loses huge amounts of money, theoretically, we are limited to only having to pay $800,000. Now, how many of you think if it loses a whole lot of money and it's more than $800,000, that they're not going to come back and ask us for more? So, you know, the question I had was the fact that this was very open-ended agreement. You know, it's well, we'll negotiate that when we get there. I'm not comfortable with that. That was the primary reason that I voted against the thing. Now it's done. I think, you know, I hope that it goes well. The benefit to our area is there's about 13 million in revenues to hotel, about 4 million for hotels, and about 9 million for restaurants. So they're going to get a lot of revenue from this traffic from this thing. The problem is it will generate for our entire jurisdictions, all 3 jurisdictions, it will generate about $1 million in additional tax revenue. Now for us it's about $350,000 a year. So we're putting in, you know, $1.5 million a year, and we're getting about $350,000 back in actual tax benefits. That doesn't count the fiscal impact that we get on our businesses doing better. So if you look at it just strictly from the taxpayer standpoint, it's not necessarily a great investment. If you're in a restaurant business or a hotel business, it's a wonderful investment. So that's basically the gist of why I voted against it. And I think we ought to open it up, and I'll let you direct questions.
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
The website just is htrfa.org. That's the Historic Triangle Recreation Facility Authority. And I do want to, just a couple things. One, when we just recently hired the CEO, went through the CEO process, we went specifically to get one who had experience with sports complexes, which Discover Lancaster does. All 3 of our finalists did. That was really important. And just speak for a moment about the historic triangle tax, of which we didn't have anything to do with. But I will say, I know people do not like extra tax. I get it. I think for Senator Norman, he saw what was happening to tourism in this area, and it was not getting. Because of my involvement with the tourism board, I talked to a lot of tourism professionals. There are areas that give a lot of money to destination marketing. Richmond has just doubled their budget from 10 million to 20 million by adding an additional tax. And they are starting to outperform this area. People will go to Richmond and then they'll come here for a day trip, but they're not staying overnight. They're staying in Richmond because of breweries and other things that they've got going on. And so in order to, you've got to invest. And I think he saw that, and that's, whether you agree, disagree with how it was done, I think that is the reasoning for it. And I don't know if any of you saw about Red Lobster going under, but one of the main reasons that Red Lobster, they say, went under is because they weren't advertising. So, gotta put money in the marketing. Well, it might have been, maybe here, I don't know. I haven't
I'm not gonna touch Red Lobster. I do wanna say one thing about it, and Jim's analogy of the whole thing, it would be the same thing as if we compare it to our libraries, doesn't make money. We compare it to our parks and recs, they make 53% of what they out there. The schools, they don't make anything. But we're not gonna let all that go and say, you know what? Because those don't make anything, we're not gonna make any decisions. Let's have dumb kids, no parks, and no flowers. You know, we're not gonna do that. And that's the thing where you have to step out in faith and go, there's just as much chance of this making a lot as it is failing. So I'm not gonna look at the glass that's half empty. I'm gonna look at the glass that's half full. And parks, they do great. I mean, we all love our parks. We have some of the best parks around. But we only make 53% of earnings on the parks. We don't make, I mean, y'all are paying it. Our libraries, we don't make anything on our libraries. Our libraries are very important. And our schools are definitely important because all those little rascals that are in there today are gonna take care of all of us tomorrow. And I want them to be smart as they can be. So questions? Yes, sir, go ahead.
I've heard all the facts about hotels, restaurants, all their money they're gonna make. How much does this place make on its own? Sure.
The question was, how much is this place going to make on its own?
Right.
So they will charge admission. We're just getting into an agreement with an operator, I think what Scott was telling us, because you have to get a management company to manage and bring, and because what we want to do is we want to open this with several things on the books. All I can do is tell you that if someone, my neighbor just went to a volleyball tournament and she paid like $30 a day to go watch her child play. And so apparently that's the norm. They didn't charge you at swim meets or regattas, but I guess they charge you in indoor.
You're telling me that you don't have a business case on the complex itself.
So the question was, we don't have a business case.
You need a partner before you come up with a business case on this complex that money's pouring into?
No, we are working towards getting an agreement with a management company that will manage that.
I hear you. I don't hear a business case on the complex. You have projections.
Yeah, yes, on what we're going to, yes, and as far as the admissions and that type of thing, that is probably something that I'm sure that the Historic Triangle, we do not sit on that. That is set on by Scott Stevens and our Park and Rec directors. So.
No, if we need to get you that information.
Yes, we can get you that.
Scott to get in contact with you to get you that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
If I could suggest, we could have, we not perhaps have time towards the end of the meeting to come back to this subject if
Sure.
necessary, but maybe we move on to another subject.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd like to circle back to something that hasn't been determined yet. Since I think it's just under 50%, since it's just under 50% of our budget is, our tax budget is schools.
Yes, sir.
My main concern is this splitting of the school district. You mentioned, Jim, $100 million for junior high. As I understand the report, Williamsburg will also have to either retrofit a junior high to make it a high school, so that's going to be a lot of money for those folks. I'm trying to get my arms around why we would split this, what you guys are doing to make it not happen.
So the question is about the school split and the cost of the middle school, which we know to be at least $100 million, and the cost to the city of Williamsburg to retrofit James Blair to make it a high school. So just so you know, the way that it works with the contract is we keep what is in our jurisdiction as far as schools, they take what's in their jurisdiction, which is why we need middle school. We need a place for 600 kids. What we were told is that there was a survey that went out before they did their answer to a strategic or comp plan, and that it comes up every time about their citizens asking whether or not they're being served best by a joint school division. That is the only thing we have to go on. Now, I do know that somebody did FOIA for that survey, and there wasn't one, but I'm guessing they heard from their citizenry that, that some people had wanted a separate school system to see if their students were being served. The report that came out that was done by their consultants, and I will say their consultants are Dr. Jeff Smith is their lead consultant that is doing their study. He is a former assistant superintendent for WJCC. He was a superintendent in West Point and Hampton. He's award-winning. He's very, very good. Their report showed their students have got, there's some learning issues there. There's some issues. However, that may not all be attributable to schools. A lot has to do with poverty. Do you have secure housing? There's just a lot of different things that go into learning. And so it would be really tough to get down to the nitty gritty from what we understand from our conversations, because we've gone back, because frankly, they're not having a decision yet came up during our budget process, because we had 3 big ticket items that were on the CIP that were for Williamsburg City Schools. And so we had to ask ourselves, do we make this investment and then they come to us July 1 and say, hey, we're going to split, and we're going to split in September? Doubtful that would happen, but then we've invested a lot of tax dollars into that. So we held off on 2, we moved ahead with 1, which was HVAC at Matthew Whaley. So we went back to them and said, how close are you to a decision? This is really impacting our new government center. Are we going to have to build a school? Where are we going to be? And we can't, I'll just be honest, we can't really get an answer. And so, but we are continuing the conversation all the time. We have a meeting in June of our school liaison committee. We will ask that again. They have asked us to join with them in a letter asking the school system to say what's it going to take to get better outcomes for all students, not just city students, but James City County students as well. But I'll tell you, one of the interesting things about Virginia, the schools have no taxing authority. They have to come to us for their money, but we have no authority over we can't tell the schools to teach a certain curriculum. So we can sign a letter with the city of Williamsburg, doesn't mean that they have to come back to us with any answer. I would hope that they would, but it doesn't mean that they have to. So I know Michael wants to say something, but I'll answer your question.
Do I understand you correctly that Williamsburg can unilaterally say 5 or out?
So we have a contract, but we have voted, and the reason that we did so was because we needed to make a decision to move ahead. We have voted to, that we're not going to renew that contract, but we have said we're open if you want to come back and talk to us. We're keeping everything on the table, and we've tried, I think, and we've done a good job. We tried to lower the temperature from the dais because a lot of teachers were getting really nervous about whether they were going to have a job, and even though we said, we've still got 10,000 students, they still have 1,000, you will have a job. We really tried to work on lowering the temperature on that, but they could, they have to give us how much notice? 9 months that so they could come to us next week and say, September 2025, we're striking out, we're starting our own school division. So we're waiting to hear.
And I was chairman when this came about, and Ruth was vice chair. And we were called over to Williamsburg with the county administrator and the superintendent and some of the members of the board on the superintendent. The mayor said, we're going to do a study to see if we're going to split. We didn't have a clue. It wasn't, do you want to do a study together? Do you want to see if it works, how we're doing it? We're thinking about, we're doing a study, and this was on a Tuesday, and we're having a meeting on Thursday, and we're announcing it. And I looked at the county administrator, I said, did you know anything about this? He said, this is the first I've heard that much. Looked over to the superintendent, I said, you know anything about this? It's the first I've heard about it. So this was something that came from the city and you see it in the paper, James City County does away with the contract and all this. Well, our job is to protect our students in James City County, first and foremost. And if you think you're gonna do a study, and this is just my opinion, if you think you're gonna do a study and you're gonna hold us hostage and our children are gonna be affected by this, then we're gonna do something right now and move forward. And that's why we had to do something to push the contract and stop that in order to either make them move or figure out what we're gonna do, because in the contract, they could leave and then say, okay, here's 650 students that have no place to go now. Now we gotta put them in trailers and disrupt their lives. To me, this is crazy, because Williamsburg had a sweet deal with us. And why you would want to come in and change it as well as it's worked for all these years. So it wasn't James City County at all, period. It came from Williamsburg, it was started in Williamsburg, it's been pushed by Williamsburg, it's been moved ahead by Williamsburg, and the mayor was the one who informed us what they were doing, and now can't give us a decision on where they're going, and it's holding us hostage to a certain extent, not only the schools, but the rest of the stuff that we need to do. So that's the meat and potatoes of the whole thing, and I just throw it out.
Just real quick, when Michael says there's a sweet deal, what he's referring to is that there's we have 5 elected school board members, they have 2 appointed. You all pay 90% of the operating costs. The city of Williamsburg pays 10% based on population, but they have 29% of the voting power. And so that's a lot of voting power for 10% of the money. So just something to keep in, sorry, Jim.
And I'll add one more thing real quick. You know, our teachers, we have great teachers. And I've had 7 children through the system and have had wonderful teachers. I will tell you, our teachers don't know the difference between a county child and a city child. So if the city's, something's going on there, our teachers aren't sitting there going, "You're a city child." Okay, county kids, come on over here. They love the kids regardless. So our teachers are not discriminating, and to go and look at the school board and say, hey, we need to do something about our city children are not being educated like the county children. They are. There's something more, and I think that goes into some of the things that are going on in the city.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I'll let these guys rest their horse for a minute. Let me start with we'll try to answer a few questions.
Excuse me. When you were talking about the development based out of Eastern State Hospital, 1,100 new homes, I'm assuming that someone's thinking that there's some industry to balance that out.
The one would think. All right, one would think. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to propose a mixed-use development. Okay, the question, Eastern State, what they're going to be doing is, are they going to be, with all the houses, are they going to be doing some sort of industry involved with that? To try to help from them. Yeah, they will come out and they will probably say, like I think when I spoke to them, already, we've all got the briefing on what they're planning. They have a portion of it, when they call it mixed use, they'll have a portion of it that will be, I think it's Colonial Behavioral Health is going to have a campus over there. There's going to be some medical aspects there. There's going to be a piece of land that they supposedly will dedicate to the county for county use. But it's mostly housing, and then there will be a small commercial aspect to it. So the question I had was, typically they try to use this, what we call mixed use designation, to get higher density of housing. And the problem is that they get away with it in a lot of cases in the past by putting, I remember the one that I remember vividly was right up by Croker Road. They had that housing area back in there and they put one little office building with 2 or 3 offices in it, called it mixed use. And therefore they justified the higher density. I don't think I'm going to buy that. I don't think any of us are going to buy that. It would have to have some sort of a significant revenue producing commercial aspect to help offset the concerns. And you talk about schools. Think about what that's going to do to schools. So let me go back just for real quick. Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, I
I just have a school question. When you invest in schools outside of Dean City County, like into Williamsburg, don't you get any equity in that building? Or anything?
Yes, we
You're
do.
talking about the cost of
Yes.
building a new school, and you just built Dean's Boy.
Yeah, the contract specifies that, and in some cases, we basically swap equities in different places, okay? So where we might have more equity in one and they have the other. But there is a documented, under the contract, there's a documented thing, and one of the problems that you have with trying to undo this school district, this has been a combined school district since 1955. Right? In order to undo this, our contract says that either side may abrogate, get out of the contract. And it specifically says if you give notice, that the separation will become effective at the end of the school year following the year in which it was given. So we've given notice during this school year. So right now, the separation would occur normally in the summer of 25. Before the school started in September of 25. That's not enough time for us to build a new school. It's not enough time for the city to do what they have to do. So we both, I spent a lot of time. I sat down with Vice Mayor over there and the city council members. I went one-on-one and small groups with them, and to sit down and try to browbeat them, try to listen. It's in our best interest to have some sort of an agreement that this is what the contract says. It's the legally binding document. But we both know that that's not going to work for either of us. We have to have some sort of binding legal agreement that we can extend this regardless of what we want to do, whether we want to split or not. We're going to have some sort of thing. The best we could get out of them was the city manager and the county administrator signed a informal document. And it said two things. Number one, it said that they would give us a decision by the end of the school year. And number two is it said that if the split occurred, we both agreed that it wouldn't occur until the summer of 28, giving us time to build what we need to build. Now, that's not a legally binding document, okay? So far, it's not holding up very well because, we said, okay, you're going to have a decision for us by the end of the school year. That's only in a couple of weeks. And you don't get a definite no, but you get the back pedal. So then the question is, what legal document do we have to operate from? And the reason we did what we did was because we had to take steps to try to be proactive in trying to protect the interests of our students. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. I think ultimately, I don't know what they're going to decide. And ultimately they'll give us a decision, but it may not be for another 6 months. So we're sort of caught in that difficult position right now.
I wanted to say real quick though, what we have found is that they do not, we do a better job with our assets. Well, I shouldn't say maybe better job. We do a different job of how we account for our assets with the school than the city. They do it differently. They not like every year, like, okay, we have a chair and the depreciation, and so it's not so easy as to say, okay, James Blair, we're going to walk away. We've invested $30 million. We're going to walk away with 20, because we're finding that if we should enter into another contract, there's some different ways. We're going to have to make sure we line up on things like our assets and how we're showing appreciation and depreciation for them.
I have a question over here.
Yeah.
Jim?
Two questions. I want to follow up on the question, or earlier question about developing more commercial opportunities in James City County. That is what would help the tax base here, and I never hear anything about efforts being directed towards developing more commercial base. The other question has to do with having a contract to provide garbage services. We in Ford's Colony have talked about whether it would be in our best interest to negotiate a service contract for garbage removal that might be lower than what we are all paying now. But we keep deferring the decision because we think something's going on at the county level.
Let me start with that last one first, if you don't mind. Garbage collection. we've undertaken a study for solid waste, and we've actually made the decision and passed a resolution that basically we have to give notice to all the companies that are providing service throughout our community. The state requires us to do that, and then the state also requires that we can't actually physically do it for 5 years. So we had to give notification. We've been studying this for a while, and I'm pretty clear. We can provide, whether, as a countywide mandatory trash pickup, we can provide the service a hell of a lot cheaper than a lot of us are paying. I don't know about you, but when I first moved here, I was working with a BFI, Allied Waste, and they got to be up over $30 a month for me, and this was quite a while ago. And Forts Colony had negotiated a sort of sweetheart deal with a couple of them, and I went with county waste. And I got my garbage for $16 a month. Well, it's now $29 a month. All right, it just keeps going up and up and up. One of the things we found is by having the critical mass of the county, we could probably do a whole lot better. We could provide trash, we could provide much better incorporated, not a separate bill, recycling. We could provide bulk waste pickup to a greater degree than we do right now. We could provide all these services a lot better. How would we do it? We looked at two different options. One was we could do it in-house. But I think we are mostly leaning toward doing it. The county does it, but it would be a contracted out. And we could contract out to multiple companies. We might do a small company outside the PSA. We might do another one inside the PSA. I think that's what we're leaning toward right now. The problem is we are constrained by the state that we can't physically do all of it as quickly as we'd like to. We'd love to do it right now.
Yeah, but if you don't make a decision, the 5 years just keeps being.
That's right. So we made the decision. We started the clock. We fulfilled, this was a meeting, about a week ago?
Yes.
A couple weeks ago? We passed a resolution that basically, in compliance with state law, set notification to all the companies. Now, what will happen in the next intervening years is all those companies are going to go lobby the legislature. All right? They don't want it. We had the only speakers we had at that public hearing were all from the trash companies. There wasn't one single citizen there arguing that it was a bad idea. Wasn't one arguing it was a good idea either, but most people didn't know about it. That's where we are on that. Let me go back. What was your other one? Commercial. Oh yeah, we have hired a solid waste person to sort of ramrod this effort on the county staff. So we've actually taken that step as well. Commercial, short-term stay. There are two things that I would tell you. One is, somebody said, well, why don't we have this company? Why don't we have a Wegmans? Or why don't we have a Whole Foods? Or why don't we have this? Or why don't we have that? And one of the things that I'll tell you at local government is we really don't have a whole lot of sway or power of doing. We can try to entice people. We can try to provide things. People, they come when the market's there. I will tell you that you are getting a Wawa. Okay? It's over on Monticello. All that dirt being turned there, it's going to be a Wawa. My daughter's just ecstatic. But one of the things we have is we have a lot of empty storefronts throughout the area. And one of our biggest challenges sometimes is repurposing some of those. And I'm a little reluctant to go approve new places when we still have that kind of a problem. Now, we do have one that's approved up by Stonehouse. Nothing's been built on it yet. Where we can actually do better, I think, rather than retail or whatever, is some of our industry. Now, one of the things that we did was we did do a new industrial park right up off of exit 227. Have you ever been up there where McDonald's is? Right off 227, right behind there, between there and the Upper County Park. And again, I was in the minority. I voted against it. Not because I didn't want the thing, but because I felt that what we did was we gave away too much control over what happens on that property in order to satisfy the owner so that he could sell it. Well, now it's been sold. We have somebody coming in and developing it. And and we're going to have a lot of industry move into that. And it's going to be the kind of industry that will help pay a little more of the freight, probably to a better extent than some of our commercial, some of our retail. But I'll tell you, during COVID, we cut 10% out of the budget because we were worried about the loss of tourism revenue. I think we were all a little surprised at how well we did the next couple of years on our budget because of, one, staff being really judicious with it, but number two, was we have a lot of resiliency in industry. How many people here know that there's a company called Nadian? You aware of it? Okay, a couple of them. Used to be, what was it originally? John Deere. And then Lumber Liquidators was in the building. And Nadian came in. Nadian is one of the largest producers of tank hot water heaters in the world out of South Korea. They came in and they elected to make us their national headquarters.
Wow.
I mean, not only that, I mean, we're regional for South America for distribution for them and everything. It brought in a lot of investment. We bought land next to the building, so we had it for them to expand because they already have expansion plans. Those are the kinds of things that go on behind the scenes, and you may see an occasional reference to it in the press, but it's not as sexy as a new restaurant.
I was just gonna add too, I think that's one thing that James City County has done very well, is that you don't have industry when you come out of your neighborhood. You know, you have the Walmart distribution center, which is on the other end of the county, which is a huge thing for us. In Kings Mill, I don't know if any, you know, the applesauce that you pop off, you know, we've got Print Pack, they make the applesauce containers. We have the brewery, the largest taxpayer. We're doing Hankins up by Stonehouse. So I think James City County's done a good job of pushing industry away from residential development as much as they could. We do have, Chris Johnson heads our economic development. They are working all the time to try to bring more economic development into the county. It's all the time, so.
There's another question here.
Yeah.
Hi, could you remark on the budget that was just passed? And I noticed in order to give back a few cents on the tax on the houses, that quite a bit was cut from other things. Could you tell us about what's not being done because, you know, you decided to give back
We cut $6.5 million out of the capital investment program. Okay, it was $3.1 million of school projects and $3.4 million of James City County projects. And in most cases, they were what I would say things that were nice to have, or some things that we probably need but weren't urgent. And when we made the decision to continue funding the air conditioning HVAC repair over at Matthew Whaley in the city, that was because that was a pretty urgent situation. You know, we didn't feel it was fair to do that. But there were several other programs. We said, hey, those could be pushed back. You know, one of them was some improvements to Cooley Field. Another one had a school project that even the schools, we went to them and they said, yeah, we can push that back a little bit. So a lot of the things that we did on our side, I think, had to do with some of the Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that one thing that, we got a last minute, request from the schools for $500,000 additional dollars. It was actually on the day that we were starting to, talk about our budget. And the day that we came back to approve our budget, the superintendent reached out to the county administrator and said, are you going to give us that $500,000 additional money? And Mr. Stevens said, well, I don't think so, because we're under a lot of pressure here to do something, which is what got us to the tax credit. And so it was, well, we're going to have to take that from the raise. And we talked about that at our meeting, so this is very public, because we realized that the teachers needed that raise, but what we wanted to see was the school board do what we had done, which was really scrub our budget, go out to community meetings, talk to people. We get that you may not agree with everything that we've done, but we want to be transparent about it and we want to work our budget, which we felt that we needed to do. And so what Michael had said also was, hey, talk about it, and if you can't come up with it, you can't come up with it. So come back to us and say, hey, we tried, we found 10,000, we found 100,000, you know, but we couldn't find everything. What can you do for us? And I watched their meeting last night, and they came up with it. They did not, and I have to give credit to their board for that, especially Sarah Ortego, their chair, because I talked with her and said, you know, we really need to know that you are working that budget. And they did, and they had some grant money, they had some leftover money that they could use towards other things, but they did not take it from the teachers, because that puts us in such a political, you know, it's like, we can't give you that extra % raise because of the board of supervisors, so.
I can tell you, this is, with schools in the past, we've had this interesting thing that we would not give them everything they asked for. They had a habit of going out and finding the one thing that they could cut out of the budget that would make them, every parent in the community mad. And then they said,
They did it.
so, you know, that kind of relationship was very destructive. We don't have that right now. We have a very good working relationship. Okay, here we go.
First of all, I appreciate everything you've done, and I trust you all that you're looking after our financial and everything. But something that seems to address across all of these things is there anything being done to get staff to work at all these places? Every place I go has their hiring signs, and I'm told that they can't see this at restaurants because they don't have enough staff, and they can't wait on me in the line because their staff is available. So I know that there used to be a rule for workplace housing every time a new development was put in. Is that still available?
Yes, we try to do that, but the thing about it is what I'm seeing and owning a business for 36 years, I can't find a carpenter. Unbelievable. I can't find, you know, anybody. And I was just talking, I'm finance chair with HR Tech, and so I was talking to my director down there, and we're trying to get a CFO position, put it out there. It's been out there for months and all that. We have 3 people. 2 are internal, and 1 is a gentleman that is retired twice, and, you know, and still wants to be in the workforce. And, you know, he's 68 years old, and which, you know, I'm fine with a 68-year-old guy, as long as lady, as long as they know what they're doing and all that, that's fine. But, you know, you gotta think of, okay, how many more years will I have, and that's why. So trying to find people, what I found during COVID, a lot of our workforce that was working and filling in all these odd jobs were a lot of retirees that said, you know what, I want a little spending money, I want vacation, I got my money here that I know is gonna pay for all this, but I want some extra little cash, so I'll go do this and that. Well, when COVID hit, they were like, I'm not dying, I've got retirement, I'm going home, y'all have a nice day. And we lost a big amount of people. And then a lot of our younger group is that they don't have the workforce ethics that, you know, we didn't care what we had to do, as long as we could work. Give me a job, I don't care what it is, I want a job, I want to work, I want to pay money. Now it's more of unless I'm making $20 an hour, I'm not sweeping that floor. And so all of us, everywhere I talk, we're all running the same thing. And so what we've done is, and I talked to the board as well about it, I said, a big push is workforce housing and that sort of thing. And to me, it's more of a political thing than it is. So I look at things and I go, okay, what is going on here? Why is this happening? The biggest thing, the reason it's happening is because the people that are working can't afford to have certain things. So that's your issue. And so then how do you address that issue? And in James City County, what we're trying to do is go, let's make it so our employees can make the wage they need to make to stay in James City County, to live in James City County, and be here 30 or 40 years, and retire in James City County. But also the other thing we found with fire and police getting into employees, we found usually when we hire in groups. And I'm sure any of y'all in business that have been in business and all that know there's a point where you grow and you go, okay, I need to hire 10 people, 20 people, 30 people. Well, you hire those, And all of a sudden, those 30 people retire at the same time. So then your police force goes down in the bucket. And you're like, why don't you have police officers? Why aren't you doing it? So we're looking at those trends and trying to look out, when's our next group? Well, our next group's about 10, 12 years out. And on our staff way. And so we're looking now is how do we fill that? How do we put the people in there? Because we're having such a turnover, staff's getting tired because they're training people and they get them trained and then they go to York County for another $1. I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna train another one. Golly, damn, I spent 3 months training this one and now they're just gonna leave. And so it's bringing morale down on the staff. So we're working on that as well on the staff side as far as, okay, we're gonna have to pay a little more in order to keep people here and be able to serve our citizens. And if we lose that and y'all come in and go, okay, well, my house is more expensive and I can't get any darn service. Well, that's really good for me. So those are the things we're trying to battle and look for. So yes, and anytime a new development comes, we're looking for workforce housing, and that's what I to try to fit it in with the development and not have it totally by itself.
I just real quick just wanted to say though, we have to be very cautious as our colleague always reminds us, because a lot of times, like I've got a developer that wants to come in and put something behind Shanko's grant, and but I'm going to do workforce, I'm going to do affordable housing, and it's $425,000 for, you know, is what they are saying is affordable housing, which that may be. However, they can buy that house on Tuesday for $425,000 and turn around and sell that house for $500,000 the next Monday. So it doesn't stay. So you have to just be careful that you just don't get hooked into, oh, that developer's coming and they're going to put in affordable housing. This gentleman's standing up.
Yes, good evening. Could you address the planning for a new county office building?
Okay. What part do you want me to?
How far out is it and what kind of money is required and why isn't Mounts Bay good enough?
Okay, all right, sounds good. Well, Mounts Bay at one time was the spot because it was given to us through Anheuser-Busch in order to have the facility there because they were building Kings Mill and Busch Gardens. So we're good to have the inspectors and the county and everything right there. We'll give this to you if you build your facilities and keep them there. And that worked out great for many years. But I compare it to almost growing up. You know, as you grow up, everything works out well, but one day you become an adult and you need different things and more things than you had when you were a child. And so the county complex that we have now that exists, and I saw it in the fire department. When I was assistant chief in the volunteer fire department, we have meetings and everybody, the storm's coming in, and you see all the vehicles in the county coming to EOC, having a meeting 8 o'clock in the morning, deciding what we're gonna do, and then they fan out from there. The storm changes, as weather always does, and it intensifies. Now we have a meeting at 3 o'clock, everybody's gotta come back to that meeting. By the time they went through all those meetings, got the staff, everything was getting accomplished as far as the storm goes. But we're wasting critical time. If we're integrated in one building, now we're maintaining a lot of buildings. Well, it's gonna cost us $100 million to maintain and add on to all the buildings we have. It's gonna cost us $100,000 to build a new building. $100 million. So, $100 million in order to build the new building. So, wouldn't it be better to build a new building and integrate everything in it, have a one-stop shop, then repair and try to add? We just dug almost 6 foot in the ground to repair sewer lines in our lobby at the county. Because they were clogging up, we had to get Roto-Rooter in there every day. First it was every month, and then it was every couple of weeks, then it was every day, and then those buildings are down. And so we had a study done so that we would know what the costs were and how it compared. And it worked out almost dime for dime, and we're better off with a new building will be able to cut down not only on the vehicles that we have out on the street, because we're not gonna need to run from place to place to get this now. Citizens will be able to come to one place. Well, also, it'll be more environmentally friendly as far as being under one building. It'll be easier on maintenance and everything else under one building. You're not gonna have to repair all the heat and air, the roofs and that sort of thing. So we can take that money and put it into other things that we are now putting into repairing and fixing up old buildings. And we had a study of where we would be in year after year after year and how many people we need and what we need, and that's what we're designing this building for. Now, in another week or two, we're having our first meeting for the general public. It's been publicized, it's on our website. Is tomorrow night? That's tomorrow night. Boy, we came by quick, didn't it? Tomorrow night will be our first, and we've had several of them as far as staff and all of us. But we want input. We're gonna put it out as much as we can for the public to get out there and tell us what you see. Now, the other part of this scenario is these other spots that we have, we can use for other things or sell them. And if we take those other lots and other properties and sell them that we don't need, then we can put those in the general public, and then there's another tax base of revenue coming in where it's not right now. So there's a lot of benefit to it, and it's one of the things that we're to the point now where we've gotten to the point where we need to have one central location, and where we thought about War Hill, and the board decided, no, let's get it over closer to the rec center, so we're putting in the rec center right next to the rec center there, and we'll share the parking lot, but that will in turn do a lot for the community.
Oh, the only other thing I was gonna add to that, Michael is very passionate about this, if you can't tell, which I appreciate. But the only other thing I have to add that I think is a serious consideration is times were very different when that building was built, safety-wise. And we have to take into consideration the safety of our employees. And right now, the way that we are set up on a campus like that, you would not build that type of setup today. And so that is one thing that we are taking under consideration as well, the safety. And I'm trying to find, I'm not looking on my phone, checking my text messages. I'm going to try to find what time the meeting is. I'm pretty sure it's at the rec center tomorrow night.
No, it's at Legacy Hall.
Legacy Hall, thank you. Do you know the time? I'll look that up, but it's tomorrow night.
Let me throw my 2 cents in. This is one of those cases where I'm in agreement with my buddies here.
I finally got him over the line.
Got me over. I said I'll support it only under the condition we name it the Kibble Building. This started with a space needs study, and you know while I've been on the board, we built a new building F down there. Those of you who were around here way a long time ago, there was a building C. That was a very small little building where we used to have the board meetings. It was a horrible place. And we determined that it was going to be a problem with the termites with holding hands. So we tore it down and we built a new building behind. All those buildings were built over since the 70s. And what's happened is, when I moved up here in '94, we were only 42,000 people in the county. We're over 80,000 people now. You don't continue serving double the population with the same number of people. And so as a result, we have been very slowly acquiring, moving people, putting them in other places, and we've got a proliferation of buildings all over the county, widely dispersed. And some of them are very old, some of them are very expensive to repair. And the study did a very good job of saying, all right, case number 1, what are our needs for the next 20 or 30 years, and what would it take to keep the current buildings we have, expand them, maintain them, bring them up to speed, and maybe build a few more, and make it come through and provide what we need. That figure came out to roughly $100 million. And the answer was, okay, if we take and put this one building on this one facility and consolidate everything, the answer was it's about the same cost. So what we have is, instead of old buildings that we're trying to keep speed tape together, we're gonna have a new building. I firmly think that's, and it's centrally located in the county, as opposed to having to travel to the far ends of the county. I think what we'll have is we'll have that building there, we'll still maintain probably a satellite facility up in the north end and possibly in the south end of the county. I would think that would be the benefit of some of our citizens. But it would be a lot better, because now, when we do have these meetings, the crisis, or the hurricane or whatever, all of our staff is in one spot. We don't have people getting out and running all over the county and county. How many vehicles do we have? We have about 400 vehicles. We have a huge expense in gas and vehicles and mileage that this study basically says we can probably cut about 30 to 40% of that off by having everybody working together and co-located. And so I strongly support it. The problem we have right now is like anything else. It's always, you have to look at the CIP and you have to look at the competing priorities. Ultimately, if we have to build a new middle school, that to me that's going to be a higher priority. This is a lower priority, but it's still nonetheless a priority, and I think it's going to be better for the citizens in the long run. So
6 o'clock tomorrow night, Legacy Hall.
6 o'clock.
I'm gonna cut this off. Okay.
We gotta quit it?
Yeah, you got, you guys,
It's a safe on.
you guys can,
Hang out with
you
everybody?
guys can hang out,
Good,
okay? You
good.
said that you would do that.
Yes,
So
we
if you
will.
have, if you have questions for any of them, we'll be hanging around here a little bit after this. But we are at the end of our calendar. I do want to say one thing to the three of you. You talk about a lot of big issues, but you also worry about what I'll call a little issue. Okay, we had a master plan amendment that went before your board a couple of weeks ago, which you approved, which I want to thank you for. And for all of you to know what that was, is that we had a proffer at the property at Firestone Drive coming into our community. It was originally placed there, a proffer, if they wanted to build a fire station. They built the fire station in another place. We don't have enough dirt, that's my phrase for it. And it would be nice to have some land that we could use for amenity use. And removing that proffer and setting it up that way, we have that opportunity. So I want to thank you guys for that. As I said, they'll be somewhere in this room. You know, I can't imagine that you might not have no more questions. Okay, so thank you all for coming.